Hello everyone and welcome back to the Lords of Infinity demo. So in the last episode, we managed to turn around and rebuild our Darren Daal Dracone, and we have now assumed our role as Lord of Rumburg, I believe it was. So we will continue forward and let us see what the future will hold for us. All right, so these are my stats now. Sir Darren Daal Dracone, Baron Rumburg. Major, Royal Dragoons, half pay. I am 29 years old. I started off 18 years old. Been in war for 11 years now. Well, I think it said 12 years in game, but you'll see. Current funds, I have 2,350 crowns. Current biannual income is 150 crowns. Current debts, 16,500 crowns. Good God. So, and you'll see another thing that we also didn't do while building our character. We also didn't actually, I guess we didn't actually contribute anything as far as our debts go as well. So, and I think we didn't have the choice with helping out the Davis Dahl Elson. And I think there was a few other choices that we actually didn't get a chance to. I don't know if that'll come up while we're actually playing the game, but we'll see. Soldiering is a 35, charisma is 50, my intellect is a 65. I don't remember how much it was in the actual game. I'm pretty sure this was higher. I'm pretty sure my charisma was a little bit higher as well. I have a reputation of 50% and a health of 65. I think that just kind of happens anyway due to various things that happens in the game. My idealism is a 90%. I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. And my mercy is 90%. I'm also pretty sure that wasn't the case in the full game as well. You are a Knight of the Red, having the right to wear Bane hardened armor and wield a Bane rune sword. Known friends and associates: Sir Caius de All Casarosta, bastard son of the late Countess of Linscourt, Major, the Royal Dragoons. Johannes de All Finley, Duke of Canaris, Colonel, the Royal Dragoons. Lord Renard de All Finley, eldest son of the above, Major, the Royal Dragoons. Salhammon Lanzerl, Color Sergeant, the Royal Dragoons. Robert Marion, Sergeant, the Royal Dragoons. And Eleanora de All Wells, Countess Wells, proponent of military reform, friend to Isabel, Princess Royal. All right, and we will begin the story with this character. However, you can open the test menu as well. Let's see what this includes. This will end character creation. Sure. Actually, you know what? Don't want to go through all those choices again. So I'm just going to begin the story with this character. I think the test menu is to just add certain things in and maybe certain choices. The hell with it. Let's see. Testing menu. This menu provides options that will allow testers to replicate circumstances which can normally only be achieved by an import. These options will not be available unless the player replay / pre-made choices allow their character to be eligible for them. There is no guarantee that these options will work perfectly, and some inconsistencies are to be expected. It is for testing purposes only and will not be included in the final version. This is Lady Alexandria. She was the daughter to Lord Corberit, if I'm not mistaken, and she's the one where if you turn around and what was it? If you go on the mission with Royal Intelligence, then that's who you have to capture, and that's the mission. Now you can just straight up kill her if you don't have the right stats or if you just want to, but that's a thing. So yeah. Squire Lord Renard. I don't know if we actually did this. I think we did, but I'm not sure. Invite Locke. Not sure about that. We did write the memoir, so there's that. You can romance Countess Wells. I did look that up a little bit after I played the game on the channel, and apparently I think you have to what is it? It's right before the last battle. I think you have to meet her. We didn't meet her in the last battle, so never happened in ours. Activate Sainthood storyline. I don't know what that is either. So yeah. So we will, and of course you can invest in Garing's rifle project. We did invest in Garing's rifle project. I don't remember how much it was, but let's see. We will just do it and see what happens. Oof. This option will make your current character one who invested a substantial amount of money into Edmund Garen's new rifle project in Guns of Infinity. However, you will also need to determine how much you invested as well as whether you offered him any design advice. I'm guessing because okay, so I guess this is the first one, this is the second one. I invested 4,000 crowns into Garen's rifle project. I actually don't know how much we invested. I know we invested quite a bit. Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't just this much. I could be wrong about that. I'm gonna just go ahead and say 4,000. Pretty sure it's not right. I'm pretty sure it was less than that. But yeah. Did you offer Gehring any advice regarding the design of his rifles? I don't think we actually did. I might have changed this though. So I'll just say yes, I proposed a locking system based on a deadbolt. So yeah, if I didn't actually do this and it wasn't in the actual gameplay, then you can, if you have a high enough intelligence, and I think I might have been just slightly off if I didn't actually do it. But if you actually have the whole thing, then you can actually propose a deadbolt system where I'm assuming this will be similar to like the M1 carbines that were around during World War One, I think it was, or the M4 carbine. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not not really good when it comes to rifles and stuff like that, or any type of guns. But yeah, I think that's what this is kind of alluding to. But you know, we'll see, because I believe he mentioned it as something like similar to a latch and a lock system on a door. Why not have something like that as the cartridge and whatnot? So, and if that was the case, then the rate of fire would be increased drastically, so on and so forth. You wouldn't have to, you know, worry about loading rifles and stuff like that. So, well, you wouldn't have to worry about it taking so long. So, but we'll see how that goes, and we will say that we proposed the locking system based on a deadbolt. So yes. Oh, that's the only one we can choose. All right, cool. Let's see. All right, the prologue. Ren, the cavalry officer newly returned from the war in Antar, takes up his seat as a lord of the Tierran Cortes. Before we jump into this, let's see if we have any state of war or anything like that. Oh, okay, so in this case, we're going to have the affairs of the state. Barony of Rumburg, we'll also have that, and we'll also have some reference materials and stuff like that, but we don't have anything right now. All right. Lord Darren de Aldricone, heir to the Barony of Rumburg, presents himself before the King's Majesty. You step forward as the herald's booming announcement echoes off the stone walls of the Cortes chamber, the long train of your investiture robes dragging against the plush carpet with every step. You feel the gaze of your soon-to-be peers fall upon you from all directions, the heat of their attention boring through the thick fur mantle on your shoulders. Everything chafes, everything itches. With each step, you deplore the encumbrance of your robes even more, even as you long for the absent weight of your saber and pistols. Yet you keep steady, eyes front, shoulders back. You force yourself to walk as if the eyes of the king himself are upon you, because they are. There he is, at the far end of the chamber, a thin, auburn-haired figure wrapped in the mass of his court robes. His eyes are weary. His face is old for a man not yet 30. Lined prematurely by the stresses of war and rule, still he sits proud atop the throne his ancestors had carved from stone and steel and dark Butian wood. Tired eyes following as you approach. And I didn't really think about that either. Like, if I'm not mistaken, we were 18 when we started the game, and Miguel was 60, so we're actually older than him. But yeah, he's been around since the beginning, and he's been through just as much. Well, he hasn't been through just as much as us, because he hadn't been out here fighting or anything like that. But yeah, he's been around since the beginning, and we're roughly the same age. So it's kind of interesting seeing the dichotomy of the relationship there, considering how we both have grown up through this stuff. The etiquette for approaching a king of Tierra had been drilled into you as a child. Through the long years of turmoil in between, your father's voice reaches out to you and guides your limbs. Stop precisely 12 paces before the dais. Bow. 3 paces forward. Bow again. 3 more. Kneel and await the king's reply. But it is not the king who moves first. Instead, a dour-faced man in the uniform of a lieutenant colonel of the Grenadiers steps out from the shadow of the throne. In his hands, he carries a gigantic two-handed sword, larger even than those used by the Knights of the Red, its blade flickering with the faint tracery of bane-ruined steel. You've seen this sword before, though only in engravings and paintings. Pact Maker, the Tierran sword of state. You recognize the Grenadier from an engraving as the man sets the sword before his king, Sir Daniel de Lefebvre, the officer who captured fortress of Janus Koval in the last years of the war. Part of you wants to ask how he managed it, how he had taken a fortress which had withstood Saint Stanislaus himself with only a battalion of grenadiers and a handful of lancers. But now is not the time. That is not what you are here for. And I think I remember this guy because I'm pretty sure I just called him Leaf. The grenadiers step back. The king rises, taking up the sword with which Edwin the Strong had wrought the unified kingdom more than a century ago. With solemn, practiced grace, he moves forward. In the silence, even his soft footfalls upon the rich carpet seem to echo. He stops, little more than an arm length away, and with a strong, clear voice, he utters the words which he must have by now said 100 times before. I, Miguel of the House of Renderware, Duke of Atoria and King of Tierra, do confirm before those assembled here the rights of Lord Darren of the House of Dracon to the barony of Rumburg. I hereby pledge all my power to the preservation of his freedoms, his properties, and his titles. I swear to accept his counsel in the governance of the realm. I swear to be his champion in peace and his brother in war. This I swear on behalf of myself and the rightful heirs of my bloodline. This I swear by the saints and my sacred honor. Slowly, carefully, he turns the pact maker in his hands, reversing the blade until its hilt hovers just a hand's breadth from your face. Upon this oath, swear your loyalty to me, he continues with all his ominous ceremony the occasion deserves. Or with this blade, strike me down. Your fingers reach out, brushing the silver inlay of Pact Maker's pommel. I, Darren of the House of Dracon, do hereby swear fealty to Miguel of the House of Renderware and acknowledge him as my liege and rightful king of Tierra. The oft-rehearsed words come to you readily, flowing from your lips as easily as breath. I hereby pledge all of my power to the defense of this realm, to the enforcement of his laws, and the protection of his honor. I swear to offer him wise counsel in the governance of the realm. I swear to be his brother in peace and his champion in war. This I swear to him, and to all the rightful heirs of his bloodline. This I swear, before all assembled here, and with his life in my hands, this I swear by the saints and my sacred honor. Pact Maker draws away as your voice echoes against the stone. The king stepped back. Then, by my right as sovereign and the authority vested in me by this Cortes, I named you Baron of Rumburg, as your father was before you, he declares, loud enough for all to hear. Rise, Lord Rumburg, and take your rightful place among your peers. Well, here we go. You rise to a polite round of applause, the sound almost too small for the massive chamber. You are used to more recognition than this. In Antar, men stood to attention whenever you passed, by respect for your rank, if not your reputation. But you are in Antar no longer. The men in chamber with you are not ones to be impressed by a major's insignia or a reputation won on the battlefield. Now you are merely one more minor lord, come to join their ranks. You look for the banners of the Salt Coast Lords, of Leonis Court, and Castermain, and Crittenden. When you find them, you move to join the assembly of hard-faced men sitting in their shadow. Begrudgingly, some of them move aside to allow you space to seat yourself. You take your seat in time for the king to lay Pact Maker across his lap. The booming voice of the sergeant-at-arms echoes across the stone, calling the chamber to order. At last, the business of governance begins. Quorum is obtained, grievances are aired. The issues facing the chamber at first are minor ones: the placement of a fence, the ownership of a road, petty squabbles made significant only by the noble blood of those entangled in them. Yet even so, you pay close attention to the proceedings, even as some of the lords around you seem to nod off or pursue their own conversation with their neighbors. You note carefully how a lord of the Cortes must present a motion before the chamber, how he must never address another member by name, only by title, how he must ask the king's permission to speak, and how the king, bound by the strictures of his own office, cannot but give it. In truth, the complicated procedure of the Cortes makes for more interesting watching than the debates themselves. When you had imagined what it would be like to sit upon the body which governed the unified kingdom, you had thought of great and eloquent statesmen delivering thundering condemnations of evil and high-minded appeals to goodness and virtue. The Cortes was supposed to be the refuge of the best men, doing their utmost to ensure the prosperity of the realm and the security of its people. Instead, you find men no better than you in an atmosphere more like a fish market or a cafe than a solemn chamber of state. It is then, as you begin to come to terms with the reality of your new peers, that the burble of conversation suddenly halts. The chamber falls silent as a youngish, broad-shouldered man, a fashionably cut frock coat, steps out from under the section of benches just to the left of the throne. He steps out onto the aisle as those still standing take their seats. With the requisite bow, he turns to the throne. Your Majesty, His Grace, the Duke of Wolfram, requests permission to address the chamber. So this is young Wolfram, the son of the man who died at Blagia, the man whom, by all accounts, has become one of the most powerful and controversial voices in the Cortes. This, at least, will be worth paying attention to. The king nods his assent. Wolfram turns to face the whole chamber, his voice a low tenor with the gravitas of a practiced orator. One would like to open on a note of thanksgiving, for there are those in this chamber to whom much is owed. In the long years in which this realm has been at war, it has become easy to forget the truly extraordinary scale of the exertions of those who have taken up arms in defense of crown and kingdom. When war becomes commonplace, it cheapens even the most brilliant acts of courage in the eyes of those who do not live the terror of battlefield for themselves. When such the men who perform such acts are forgotten, then we are all cheapened. He turns as he speaks, chest out, shoulders back, his voice broadcasting itself like a farmer with a handful of seed. Thus, let us not forget that there are those in this very chamber who have performed prodigies in the face of the king's enemies, those who have endured cold and death to be restored to us once more. Let us recognize Viscount Palliser, whose charge broke Corbirett's army. Let us recognize the Duke of Havenport and Canaris, who cannot be here with us on this day. Let us recognize the Viscount Wire, the Earl of Castlemaine, Viscount Hugh, and Baron Matheson. Let us recognize the newest addition to this chamber, the gallant Baron Rumburg, whose dragoons helped save the army at Blosia. Let us recognize them all, and all those who have fallen on foreign shores, lest we forget the sacrifices they have made. A fresh wave of applause washes over the chamber. You see Palliser, made a viscount for his role at the Second Battle of Caringia, incline his head in appreciation. Castlemaine seems to turn an even deeper shade of red than normal. I think I rather enjoy being recognized like this. Such compliments will mean little to the dead. I wonder what Wolfram is getting at opening his address like this. Yeah, I mean, I'm not stupid, so what is he up to? There is some hidden purpose to Wolfram's words, though you are not quite sure as to what. What is certain is that he did not bring the Cortes to a standstill for the sake of a few lines of poetic flattery. The only question is to where he means his speech to lead. He does not wait long in providing you with an answer. But now our realm is restored to peace, Wolfram continues, as soon as the applause fades enough for him to be heard. Would it not be only just and fitting for our soldiers and sailors to return to their interrupted lives and enjoy the prosperity and tranquility for which they have fought and bled for? There is a murmur of approval, not just from Wolframite benches, but from all around the chamber. The Duke nods with them. Yet instead, they return to find the kingdom on the brink of ruin. They find the shops of their fathers bankrupt, the shawls of their mothers threadbare, and the bellies of their children empty. Wolfram's voice grows in pitch, even as the murmurs of agreement swell. The good people of this realm have been driven to destitution by the taxes which the esquire has levied these past 10 years. Taxes which impoverish our tenants and drive honest men to brigandy for want of food. Taxes which have strangled our markets, towns, and trading houses. Taxes contrived to pay for a war which is now over. The murmurs have become a dull roar. Many cheer and brandish their rolled up papers in approval. The king sits stone-faced. Wolfram may not have called out the man upon the throne by name, but he did not have to. It was the king's decision to retaliate so boldly against Antar's declaration of war. It was the king's decision to fight that war to the finish, and to pay for it with emergency levies and foreign loans when the kingdom's treasury ran empty. You all know whom Wolfram means to blame. For the sake of our much abused commons, I call upon His Majesty's government to repeal these taxes. The Duke continues, all but shouting over the royal roar of voices. I call upon the esquire to disband our superfluous army, draw down our oversized fleets, and deliver us a budget which does not rely on the impoverishment of our people to keep this kingdom from bankruptcy. And if the right honorable chancellor of the esquire cannot do this most elementary thing, then I call upon His Majesty to find someone who can. The chamber explodes in a renewed rush of voices, cries of approval, warring with roaring, indignant shouts of shame, shame. The king looks on, his hands white-knuckled around Pactmaker's hilt. Not far away, the chancellor of the esquire, the Earl of Weathern, sits in tight-lipped fury. You recognize some of the men shouting their disapproval the loudest, men you had served with in Antar, some even in their regimental uniforms. Perhaps you ought to join them. Even if everything Wolfram has said is true, Tierra is in need of strong defenses more than ever. Victory over Antar has made Tierra a potential great power, and a target for those in Kien or Takar who may see it as a threat to the primacy of their own countries. The unified kingdom cannot afford to be defenseless. And yet, if everything Wolfram has said is true, then Tierra's survival might just as much depend on an immediate end to wartime taxation. How could the people be dependent upon to defend a government which has done nothing but impoverish them? What purpose would it serve to commission warships and cannon if nobody is willing to man them? To be honest, I am of two minds regarding the matter. That pretty much is how I usually am with just about everything. In truth, I do not give a damn about all this. Wolfram is mistaken, and we must maintain our defenses regardless of the difficulty. The Duke of Wolfram is right. The war taxes must end, whatever the cost. I'm gonna actually answer it. To be honest, I am of two minds of this, because I do get what Wolfram is saying, that yes, they are, being probably taxed to hell and stuff like that, and you can't maintain a wartime tax. I definitely would bring the taxes down some, but at the same time, we're also in an even worse shape, because now that the war is over, we still have to renew our forces. We still need to train. We need to make up for the huge losses that we suffered in the war in the same time. So, and it's left us exposed. Now, we don't have to worry about Antar probably, but we're going to have to worry about other powers. Now, I don't think Takar is going to even, I don't think we could fight them right now. We're just not in that particular space that we can do that. Takar is way more advanced than us. They have way more troops. They're way better trained and everything else in between. But I don't know how this thing is going to go. And I don't know anything about Kien specifically, so who knows. But at the very least, we do need to have some sort of presence. Maybe not a huge presence like before, but we need something. There's a reason to Wolfram's point, but perhaps those who oppose him are not so wrong in believing that he goes too far. Perhaps there is more middle ground to be trod, some compromise amenable to all parties. Or perhaps you are merely ignorant of the realities outside the Cortes chamber, you who have been in Notoria only a few weeks, and who had been in distant Antar for years beforehand. If you are to take a side, then you shall have to do so based on knowledge which you do not yet possess. Perhaps once you have seen the country for yourself, examine the veracity of the Duke of Wolfram's rhetoric, then you will be able to decide for yourself. Until then, you remain silent and allow yourself to be drowned out in the voices of other men. So yeah, I'm not going to really engage in this. Now, I don't know how I'm going to actually do this in the full game. I do kind of like to jump into politics and stuff like that, but I don't know if I would actually do it this time around, just because I feel like I have a lot of stuff at home that I'm probably going to need to turn around and deal with first before I really try and jump into politics. So, and there's obviously some much more powerful things going on. The debate goes on. Other men answer Wolfram's address, only to be answered in return. Stroke and counterstroke, each compelling the other like a pair of fixed gear wheels turning and going nowhere. An hour passes, then two. Argument and rebuttal subside into the indistinct buzzing of voices. Those around you drop in their seats. Some doze off entirely. You are not sure you can blame them. No resolutions are passed, no motions are carried, no votes are called. The chamber does not progress. It dances. In the end, the session is adjourned more out of sheer exhaustion than any sort of accomplishment. Welcome to government. It sucks. It is a relief to stand up again and stretch your limbs. It's all you can do to avoid a most indecorous sigh of relief when your backbone realigns itself betwixt your shoulders. Still in your robes, you join the throng of your fellow lords as they file out the door leading to the antechamber and beyond to the Lord's course. Yet not long after you pass the pair of grenadiers at the antechamber doors, you find yourself approached by a pair of slim, elegant men, the brightness of their dress uniforms setting them off against the mass of somber black frock coats. You recognize them both. Not long ago, they had been your brothers in arms. Lord Rumburg, what a pleasure it is to see you here, greets the elder man in the orange coat in the infantry as he offers his hand. My congratulations on your investiture. You shake it without hesitation. The last you'd seen of Viscount Hugh, he'd been at the head of a battalion of foot in Antar. You had gotten along well enough in Antar, but now that you are once again home, you cannot help but feel a silent form of kinship with the other man. A bond of campaigns shared and common hardships remembered. The other fellow wears the tightly trousered white and sky blue rig of the White Rose Lancers, and he is no different. Sir Louis Auguste de All Palisier had commanded the cavalry brigade at the decisive second battle of Caringia at the young age of 26. For his role at that victory, he had been made Viscount Palisier, a victory title that gave him no estate, but the right to sit on the Cortes. Very fine to see you here, very fine. He draws in a clipped, dandyish accent as he too shakes your hand. Plenty of time now for politics, I suppose, seeing we all on half pay and all, what? Good God. I think I remember this horrible way of speaking that he had. Jesus. It's definitely unique. Let me see. Let's see, perhaps, but first I must put my estate to rights. In truth, I missed the army already. I do not think I'm cut out for this sort of thing. I'll just joke around with him, saying, in truth, I missed the army already. You're not the only one, I can tell you that, Palliser admits. I've got a townhouse off St. Octavius Park holding a dinner there tonight. Informal thing, no ladies, all old Antar men like ourselves. Be honored if you'd come. There'll be other dragoons there, 2 half-pay captains, Blaylock and Sandro. They was yours, weren't they? You give it a thought. The promise of familiar faces and familiar subjects is a tempting one. The war had not been all trumpets and glory, but some part of you still misses it. You must admit the chance to talk about it with old comrades and acquaintances is, I beg your pardon, I pray I'm not interrupting. You turn to the source of this new voice, somewhat annoyed at having your thoughts so suddenly interrupted. That is when you find yourself face to face with the Duke of Wolfram. Ah, shit. Lord Hugh inclines his head politely. Your Grace, how unexpected. I assure you, I shan't detain you for long, Wolfram says genially. I merely wish to offer my congratulations to the newest Lord of the Courts. He turns to you. Welcome, Lord Rumburg. The chamber is made better for having one in it. You say the only thing one can say when complimented by a Duke of the Unified Kingdom. Thank you, Your Grace. I've also come to offer an invitation, Wolfram continues. I have a dinner engagement at the Rindleware Club this evening. I'd be quite pleased if you could join us. An invitation for dinner with the Duke of Wolfram at his private club, that would certainly be an honor. But what of Palliser and Hugh? What of old comrades in the Brotherhood of War? One cannot very well be in two places at once. And besides, what reason would Wolfram have to invite you to such a thing? You've not even spoken in the chamber. What reason could he have to offer you an invitation? I beg your pardon, what is the Rindleware Club? I'm not sure what I've done to deserve such an honor. My apologies, Your Grace, but I am already spoken for this evening, or I'd be happy to accept your invitation, Your Grace. I'm gonna say I'm not sure what I've done to deserve such an honor. I like to know where my men stand on things, what they believe, Wolfram replies. I discussed much the same with Lord Palliser last month, when he was made Viscount of Caringia. Palliser shifts a little as a slight look of unease passes over his features. Is that not what the chamber is for, you ask? To voice one's beliefs. What is said in the chamber and what is believed by the speaker is not always the same thing, Wolfram replies. To speak one's belief before the Cortes is to put on an act. One stands before 100 men, all looking for an excuse to shout one down, knowing that every word may earn one an enemy or lose one a friend. Yet, if one is a lord of the Cortes, one is also, in a sense, my brother. Even if we disagree, I would not wish to mischaracterize a brother's beliefs based on words which may be distorted by duress, or rhetoric, or the ill intentions of interpreters. Come to the Rindleware with me, and you will have every opportunity to explain your thoughts without such vexations. I am not going to take this up. I am going to say I'm spoken for this evening so I can speak with my friends. But also, I don't really trust Wolfram. I really think he's up to something. I don't know what he's up to, but I really feel like he's up to something. He's trying to build allies for something, probably to get rid of our young king and stuff like that. But I do think that while the king might be young, he is clever. He's up to stuff, and he's willing to rule by any means necessary. I'm gonna say my apologies, Your Grace, but I'm already spoken for this evening. Well, I guess I could ask, what is the Rindleware Club? The Rindleware? Palliser seems genuinely surprised that you haven't heard of it. Dear fellow, the Rindleware ain't but the oldest club in Atoria and the most prestigious. You need royal blood just to be considered for entry. He seems about to say something else, but evidently he thinks better of it. It's not quite as exclusive as it sounds, Wolfram replies with a twitch of a smile. Practically every noble in the Duchy of Atoria has some Rindleware blood in them. The House of Rindleware is nothing if not prolific. Still, we have an excellent wine cellar and maintain a very fine chef who was trained all the way in whatever that is. Dinner at the most oldest club in the city, which food prepared by a genuine Kian chef that certainly carries an appeal with it. And if the Rindleware truly is as exclusive as Palliser seems to think it is, then you will be rubbing shoulders with some of the most powerful men in the Unified Kingdom. Wolfram turns to Palliser. You're welcome to return as well, my lord, should you wish it. Palliser shakes his head. I fear I've already an engagement, he admits. Some other time, eh? Wolfram nods before turning back to you. So, is it agreed then? He asks expectantly. One may be assured that one will never taste a finer roast duck in his life. I don't know, man. Being out on the field, just some, regular food out there on the field, sometimes it's a lot better than some of this fancy food. My apologies, Your Grace, but I am already spoken for this evening. Wolfram seems genuinely disappointed. Well, that is a pity. Perhaps some other time then. He leaves you with one last final nod. Once again, congratulations. I give you joy of the evening, my lords. I was about to say ladies, good God. Palliser turns to you as Wolfram departs. I assume that means it'll be dinner with us then, eh? You may assume so, you reply. The lancer breaks into a wide grin. Very fine, very fine. I'll send my coach about 8 o'clock. It should still be light then. I shall see you then. Oh, yes, and one last thing. Yes? Come in uniform. All right? You feel a sense of almost profound relief when you are finally able to strip off your heavy investment robes and divest yourself of the unfamiliar and constricting court court shoes of civilian life, to be replaced with the comforting feeling of uniform trousers and high riding boots. Palissade's coach arrives at 8 o'clock on the minute, and his coachman ushers you in with a proud, swaggering precision. You do not need to ask to know that the man is likely one of Palissade's old sergeants. No sooner are you seated does the carriage lurch into motion. Before long, the narrow streets widen out into open, pleasant boulevards. St. Octavius Park is one of the most fashionable neighborhoods in the city for a reason. Yet even here you can see gaunt figures huddled in the street corners, hands held out in supplication. Autoria has always had beggars, but to see them here in the shadow of the magnificent homes of the wealthy and stylish is something of a shock, even more so when you notice that some of the most wretched-looking vagrants wear not the tattered broadcloth of the lowest classes, but the remains of frock coats and the lattered ruins of silk stockings. These had been men of substance once. The sight weighs on you as your coach rattles on into the setting sun. Is this what 12 years of war had brought the unified kingdom to? Beggars in the wealthiest part of its richest city. You push the thought out of your mind. There will be time for such thought later. Viscount Palissade's townhouse happens to be an imposing limestone affair, decorated with great cross beams and stone railings of the latest key and style. Palissade's title might not have brought any estates with him, but the man must certainly have some other great means of income, if he can afford a place like this. You arrive dressed in the gray, green, and red of your dragoon dress tunic, the bulk of your plumed helmet under one arm balancing out the familiar weight of the saber on your hilt. You step through the light of the street lamps, trying not to seem too perturbed by them. Neither the lights nor the wrought iron poles holding them high above the street had been there the last time you had been in Autoria. Now they are a common sight in the capital's more affluent neighborhoods, filling the street with light of coal oil flames, even in the darkest hours of the night. A livered footman ushers you indoors, and you step into a kaleidoscope of colors and martial glitter. From a high gallery, a string quartet plays familiar marching music, their airs adapted from fife and drum to hawkune and violoncello. The hall is filled with uniforms. The orange of the line infantry is everywhere. The sky blue and white of the lancers cluster around Lord Palissade's genial figure. The dark blue of the navy is here too, though only a few. There are even men in the familiar gray, green, and red and your own regiment, two of them standing by the staircase, one calm and subdued, watching the animated gestures of his companion with a combination of amusement and slight embarrassment. You recognize them, of course. Blaylock and Sanderel had been lieutenants under your command in Nantar. They'd bought their way to captain by the time the war was over, but with the regiments returning to peacetime strength, they must have been deemed surplus requirements as you were, and placed on half pay. And perhaps strangest of all, there's a tall, inhumanly pale figure in the deep blue dress uniform of an officer of the Takaran Reichshire, Lord Cassius Van Holt, ambassador to Tierra, young by the standards of his race, and full of a genteel exuberance, but already full of the customary Takaran arrogance. What he's doing here in a reception for the veterans of Tierran War is beyond you. I don't know if you can speak to everyone, but we will try. Had to get something to drink. All right. So, well, first, let me go ahead and speak to Blaylock and Sanderel. You find your former subordinates still deep in their own conversations. Sanderel leans against the polished wooden banister of the staircase, sipping idly from a glass of Canarian red, as Blaylock recounts some exploit or another. Yet the instant they sense your approach, years of instincts kick in, their limbs stiffen, and they snap to attention as you stand before them. Good evening, sir. The two of them chorus as if they were still your troop commanders. You were still their captain, and you were all still at war. Given the circumstances, I believe my lord would be more appropriate. I'll just say the war's over, gentlemen. We're all equals now. Yes, sir, Sandoral replies, out of habit, catching himself an instant after the words leave his lips. I'm sorry, sir. It's not an easy habit to break, sir, Blaylock adds with a smirk. Besides, the war may be over, but we're not exactly equals. Are we, my lord? Sandoral nods in agreement. Indeed. Congratulations on your investiture, my lord. Correct or not, the unfamiliar style still grates upon your ears just a little. For half a decade, you had been a simple sir to those men. Even if military rank had separated you by discipline, you were still all gentlemen officers of the blood. Now you are not only above them in reckoning of the king's army, but in the whole of society for every breathing moment of your life. Strangely enough, your twinge of discomfort seems to only bring relief to your former subordinates. Perhaps Blaylock and Sandoral, seeing you as unfamiliar with your new status as they are, have been assured that you are the same man who led them into battle just a few months ago. Blaylock at least seems back to his old blunt self. So what exactly brings you to us, my lord, if I may be so bold, he asked. I'd have thought you'd have gotten tired of staring at our faces by now. Let me see. I thought I would see how the two of you were doing. Yeah, that's being honest. To be frank, I find myself rather enamored of peace, Sandoral replies. In Antara, you were always ready to move at an hour's notice, never knowing if you'd be resting that night in the warm bed, or under the stars, or atop a funeral pyre. I had forgotten what it was like to wake up each morning knowing how the next day or week or month or year is to transpire. Frankly, I found its rediscovery marvelous. Marvelously boring, perhaps, Blaylock scoffs. Eat the same food, wake up to the same wallpaper, see the same saints be damned tree on the way to the same saints be damned coffee shop every afternoon, he shakes his head. You came back from Antara with just as much plunder money as I did, more even. You ought to spend it on something more happy than the writings of dusty old Kean scribblers who died without ever feeling the touch of a woman. I mean to, the other man replies, touchily. I shall enroll in the Royal University this coming year. The money I brought back from Antara will pay my tuition. Blaylock makes a noise which is half amusement and disdain. The university? If that is the case, save your money and stick to your scribblers. I spent 2 years there, and all I learned was how to sleep efficiently in a lecture hall. Perhaps if you'd done something other than sleep in your lectures, you would not have been expelled, Sandoral answers. Now it is Blaylock's turn to get defensive. I'll have you know I was a perfectly satisfactory student. It was my activities outside the lecture hall which the masters objected to. Putting holes in your fellow students, you mean? Sandoral snipes back with just enough of a grin to turn an insulting remark into a jesting one. I suppose the practice stood you in good stead in Antara. Blaylock grins wide. Then I suppose the university taught me something useful after all. Let's see. How's the regiment doing now that we are at peace? Sandoral would know better than I, Blaylock admits. Would you believe that he set up a secret correspondence ring while we were all in Antara? He might as well be working for Royal Intelligence at this rate. It's hardly secret, Sandoral answers with a look of exasperation. I even asked if you wanted to join. I just thought it would be a means to keep in touch once we all went home. That's all. And have you interjected? Kept in touch, I mean? Your former subordinate nods. Oh yes, of course. The regiment's been reduced to peacetime strength. The officers who haven't sold their commissions or gone on half pay like us are cooped up in Fernandad's court, watching their men grow fat and lazy. I can't say I envy them. Lord Reynard is still with the regiment, of course. He's supposed to be buying a promotion to major soon. I don't see much of a point to that, Blaylock comments sourly. He'll inherit the colonelcy when he succeeds his father as Duke of Canares. Seems like a waste of money to me. I'm sure he has his reasons, Sandoral replies. As for the others, Captain Garrett somehow managed to keep his command. Hawkins has 3rd Squadron now. Now that is an interesting fact. 3rd Squadron had been Casarosta's command for much of the war. If his second in command is now in charge of his former unit, then what about Sir Caius, you ask? Any news of him? We were just talking about him, Blaylock replies. He's the regimental quartermaster now. He shakes his head grimly. Now there's a job I would not wish on my worst enemy, deaf-born bastard or no. Put a fighting officer in charge of supply carts and musket stands, and he'll like as not explode. Some men rather enjoy such tasks, you know, Sandoral sniffs. Blaylock scoffs. Some men might, but Sir Caius de all Casarosta? He'll blow out his brains of boredom by the end of the year, Saint Octavia as my witness. With one quick motion, he tosses back the remains of his glass. Anyway, enough of such grim talk. Shall we change the subject, sir? Yes, perhaps that would be best. And I just wanted to see some familiar faces. In truth, I've missed you. Blaylock seems about to say something, then Sandoral, but neither do. For a moment, the three of you stand in silence, sharing a truth you all seem to know, but none of you are really willing to voice. You know, sometimes I fear that part of me actually misses the war, Sandoral admits finally. Not the death and the hardship, but how it brought us all together, united as under one purpose. Back then, when I was leading my troop, though, through some snowstorms, or burning one of my men after a skirmish, I used to long for peace. But now, it did bring us together, didn't it? Blaylock replies after a moment. In Antar, all I needed to do to hear Sandoral's terrible opinion on something was to ask. Now, I must send my valet halfway across the city, and even then, it's only a letter I get in reply. He shakes his head. All these years as a part of something greater, and now, you feel like a stone cut away from its fence, Sandoral suggests. Something like that? Blaylock nods. Yes, something like that. I wish we could do this more often. In truth, as you listen to your former subordinates banter with each other as they did in Antar, some part of you wishes you were back there too. Sandoral is right. For all of its horror, the war gave you all purpose, a common cause, a brotherhood. If peace cannot sustain each noble sentiments, then perhaps you force yourself to stop. It will not do you any good to keep thinking on this. If you'll excuse me, I think I ought to see what everyone else is up to. Of course, sir, Blaylock and Sandoral reply, much as they had when you were their captain and they your lieutenants. Perhaps they won't ever really change. You wander back to the center of the hall. It seems the reception has yet to run its course. Who to next? Okay. Let's talk to the Takaran ambassador. I think we were friendly with him. I can't remember. I've been friendly with him in several other playthroughs, so we'll see. Lord Cassius von Holt is pouring himself a fresh snifter of brandy when you catch him. Judging by the color of his cheeks, it's not his first. Ah, Draken, he exclaims with his customary joviality. No, that's not quite right. I am told that you have been subject to some ritual, and that you are to be spoken of as Rumburg. Is that correct? That's correct, you reply. As a lord of the courts, I'm supposed to be known as Lord Rumburg now. The Karen blinks for a moment, nonplussed. Oh, but that is ridiculous, he exclaims. You were Draken yesterday. Why should that change? Others may call you what they like, but you are still just Draken to me, yes? Let me see. One could stand to at least respect our customs. The title is not meaningless. It comes with the fief, privileges. Very well, do as you wish. To be frank, I find the new style rather tedious myself. Yeah. Oh, is that so? Lord Cassius asked, in a state of some amusement. Well, it is good to see that not all Tiarans are so enamored of pointless ritual. Some part of you would rather like to point out that a ritual's foreignness does not necessarily make it pointless, and that were you in Varsavoia, in the heart of the Takarian Empire, you would find their customs no doubt just as incomprehensible and opaque. Of course, it would be far from politic from you to say so. To tell the ambassador of one of the greatest powers of the infinite sea how little you are likely to think of his cherished rituals and customs seems a prescription for unpleasantness, not to mention the height of bad manners. If Lord Cassius has caught on to your train of thought, it does not seem to pay it any mind. Anyway, he continues, I suppose you've come here for a reason. What exactly are you doing here? Yeah, what are you doing here? Having a drink, clearly, Lord Cassius replies, deadpan as he takes a pull from his brandy. Rather obvious, I would think. No, I mean, what are you doing here? You repeat, not entirely unamused by the Takarian's evasive answer. Lord Cassius shrugs. This is a reception for veterans of the war in Antar, is it not? He asked rhetorically. Was I not in Antar? Did I not? What is that charming expression you people have? Dance the powder dance? Surely if you qualify to be here, then I must as well. Then you are invited, you ask. Lord Cassius might have been in Antar, but he hadn't exactly served in the king's army. He had been there in a strictly diplomatic capacity, even if his enthusiasm occasionally made him overstep his bounds. Invited? The Takarian scoffs. Of course not. I am a free citizen of the Ultrax Vom Takara. I may go where I please. I had a free evening. Your Palisar has a good cellar. Why not? Certainly nobody has objected, least of all our gracious host. Indeed, how could anyone object? To eject the ambassador from one of the greatest powers from a formal event would have been the height of incivility. Good God. Never mind grounds for a diplomatic incident which the unified kingdom could ill afford. In any case, Lord Cassius seems to pay the matter little heed. Surely there are more interesting things to talk about. Have you been since last we met? Not long after your army beat Prince Corbeard at Caringia, my superiors ordered me to Atoria, Lord Cassius replies. I've been here for the past 2 years, establishing a permanent embassy. You were not part of the negotiations ending the war, you ask. The Takarans had mediated the peace talks between the king and the League Congress. It seems strange to you that they would not maintain their ambassador to Tierra as a member of the commission involved. I was not, Lord Cassius replies, with an air of disinterest. Not that it mattered. The whole business sounds very tedious to me anyway. To him, perhaps, but this tedious business may have directed the whole fate of 2 countries. He might not have cared for the whole affair, but you could think of more than a few who would have more than wished to be there. But now all in the embassy is working as it should, Lord Cassius concludes, and as I am finding myself with more free time than I could ever want, here I am. Okay. How do you find Atoria? It is strange, Lord Cassius admits. At times, especially in the areas around the embassy, it can seem much like Varsavoia or Konoji Ziarush or some other Takarian city. Edmund II rebuilt much of the city in the Takarian style, you point out. Perhaps that is why you find it so familiar. The Takarian shakes his head. The illusion only lasts a moment. The people here are different. Everything is smelly, everything is a little too cramped, and to be honest, I'm not quite used to the sight of everyone on the streets trying to sell me something. He shrugs. I suppose that sort of petty avarice is part of the Tierran character. You mislike it, you ask. It is different, Lord Cassius shrugs. Whether I like it or not, I don't know. All right. Well, you have a good evening, Lord Cassius. Of course, Lord Cassius replies, already turning his attention back to his drink. Good evening. You turn back to the center of the hall to find the music fading away and a crowd gathering at the base of the steps. At the first landing, Lord Palliser stands apart, glass in hand. The sharp ring of metal on glass echoes across the chamber as the music fades away. The room falls silent. Those not already with their eyes on Lord Palliser quickly rectify their oversight. Gentlemen, thank you for coming here tonight. He begins, his affectations of speech falling away like a discarded overcoat. It is good to see you all here today, not only to recall the glory which we have won and the great feats of arms which we have accomplished, but also to remember the comrades we have lost and the sacrifices we have all made to return our kingdom to a happy state of peace. A murmur of approval arises from those around you, but Palliser is not finished. Now I must ask a question, he continues. What now? This time, there are only a few uncertain murmurs. What now indeed? We return to our homeland to find it not as we remember, Lancer resumes, a note of wistfulness creeping into his voice. We return to a way of doing things which we can barely understand, faces whom we can barely recognize, loved ones who do not understand what we have endured, who cannot see all that we have lived through as anything more than a bad memory to be put out of their seeing, as if we had it better off not coming home at all. More murmurs now, more vehement ones. For them at least, Palliser's words have touched the nerve. As you may well know, I was not long ago a member of the Rumburg Club, the most fashionable in the city, Palliser's voice continues, cutting high and clear through the buzz of angry mutters. When I came back from Antar, I returned there, only to find myself surrounded by men who did not care about the war. Men who had sat in soft chairs while we fought for our lives at Blagia, at Caringia, and at 100 half-remembered skirmishes. He shakes his head sadly, slowly. They were supposed to be my brothers, but to them, I was a curiosity. Young Palliser, who had went to war. The voices of the crowd grow louder, tinged with a fresh sense of outrage. Judging by the looks of anger on some of their faces, Palliser is not the only one to have felt so. The Rumburg Club did not want me, the Lancer continues. They were far too civil to say so, but I could see it well enough. The other clubs would be no better. To them, the man the war has made me would simply be an eccentric at best, and an unwanted reminder at worst. At last, I faced the truth. There is no respectable place for a soldier in this city. Lord Palliser's eyes are ablaze now, his expression a heady cocktail of indignation and conviction. There is no respectable place for a soldier in this city, he repeats, so I've decided to make one. There's a moment of surprised silence as men look to each other in something akin to shock. All around, you can see faces tormented by a fresh crop of questions yet unasked. Palliser does not hesitate in offering answers. It is no secret that I did well out of the war, it continues, but only through the exertions and skill of my fellow Tierran soldiers could I have achieved such heights. It would only be fair that my good fortune be used for our mutual benefit. I mean to establish a formal club, with premises nearby, that we may speak of the war without the judgment or curiosity of the ignorant. We may act collectively in the interest of the welfare of our fellow soldiers, and work to impress some notion of experience upon the general public. Bane blood and service in Antar shall be the only requirement for membership. War has made us brothers. It would be shameful to allow peace to isolate us from men who we have shed blood alongside. Our time away from home has turned it into a strange and unfamiliar country, but let us resolve to face it together. Hear, hear, someone shouts as a wave of applause breaks over the room. All around you, men show their approval. But what about you? Palliser's sentiment is noble, and I am sure his intentions are good. I approve. I am cautiously optimistic for the moment. It seems a good idea, but such endeavors are never as easy as they seem. I mean, I do agree that this is a good thing to have. What his intentions are, I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't necessarily think his intentions are completely altruistic, but it's good that something like this is being established, because we fought the war. We know better about what went on out there than anybody else did, and there needs to be reform. So hopefully reform can be brought about through this, as opposed to the other club, which I'm assuming is the Wolframites. That was somebody in the comment section had mentioned that one time about the Wolframites, but I'm assuming that if we go over there, they're just high nobility and so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. But over here, it seems like these are practical people and they want to actually work on trying to improve things. So we will see. I may be on the wrong side of this, but we will see. So I am cautiously optimistic for the moment. You applaud, though not as fervently as those around you. Perhaps Palisades Club will do good. It certainly seems that such an organization may be needed here in Atoria, but whether such an endeavor can succeed in the long term, and whether Palisade will be able to keep his noble aims, that is a question which only time can answer. The rest of the night passes in a haze of food and drink. You recall a rather good Calendrian risotto and a rather lively debate over the translation of a certain passage in a treatise on morality in wartime. There is Canarian brandy, of course, and Kintari whiskey, and even bottles of the clear Antari potato wine which so many officers had acquired a taste for. The string quartet play up the old marching airs again, and this time they are joined by a chorus of voices, most no longer sober. And so the halls of the grand townhouse echo with the words of the March of the King's Chosen and the Powder Dance, songs last sung in the forest of Antar. All right, so, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the Treaties of Morality in Wartime is actually something that you can read on Paul Wang's website. He tends to turn around and release different, I think the Patreons can actually vote on which things that they want to actually see and which things they would like to view. But I think that's actually one of the ones that you can turn around and read on his websites. I know there was one that talked about Lady Katarina. There's one that talked about Casarosa, and it had the whole Royal Intelligence seal and stuff on it like that. It's pretty cool. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can check out on the website. But I am going to stop this right here and we will continue on forward in the next video. So if you like the video, like the video. If you would like to see more content like this, subscribe. I will have lots of things in the future, and I will have many, and I already have many things on the channel as well. If you have any suggestions as far as games go, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I do tend to kind of remember and compile these things when I get a chance. I'll go ahead and check Steam. A lot of times when a comment is left about a particular game that somebody would like to see me play, I tend to go ahead and look it up right then and there. And if it looks like something that I will play, I'll either put it in my Steam list or I'll leave a tab open so I can go back and do a little bit more research on it later. So yeah, feel free to leave any suggestions if you have anything like this, or if you want to just see more games like this on the channel. There's a ton of choice of games that I have not played. There's a ton that I have played, but I haven't played a lot of the certain paths on certain ones. So I'd be more than happy to play it. But yeah, just feel free to leave it in the comment section, and I will see everyone in the next video. So see ya.